One of the biggest mistakes that beginners make is choosing the wrong fabric for their first sewing project. And it happens all the time. It happened to me when I first started sewing. And part of the reason this happens is because there are so many words when it comes to fabric and so many things to know and understand that it's just overwhelming when you're brand new. To be fair, I've been sewing a long time and it's still a little bit overwhelming. So I want to try to make this super easy for you and show you how to find the perfect fabric for your beginner-friendly projects. Hi, my name's Abby and I help absolute beginners start sewing their own clothes even if they've never touched a sewing machine before. So if that sounds like you, be sure to subscribe below so you'll be notified anytime I upload new videos because I promise made for you. And then let's talk about how to find the perfect fabric. The first mistake that beginners make is not knowing the difference between fiber and fabric. So let's talk about this. So fiber is the raw ingredient that we use to make the fabric. Think about it like if you were going to make a cake, the cocoa powder is the raw ingredient that goes into the batter to make the cake taste chocolatey. Okay? Or you could put in a funfetti mix and you'd have a funfetti cake. So the raw ingredients are the things that we put in the beginning. That way the end result is either a chocolate cake or a funfetti cake or some kind of cake. In the same way, fibers are the types of things that we put into our fabric to get out specific the fabric. Okay, so you can put in cotton and you'll have cotton fabric. You put in linen and you'll have linen fabric. Okay, so when we talk about fibers, there are two main categories, either natural fibers or synthetic fibers. And when we talk about natural fibers, we typically mean cotton, linen, wool, silk, and bamboo. Okay, these are really nice, eco-friendly, they breathe really nicely, they feel great on the skin, very nice options. Now, there is a special subcategory of a fiber here, and that is viscose or rayon, which is the same word which is two different words for the same fabric, which is actually a manufactured fiber, but it comes from wood pulp. So it's still technically a natural fiber. Now, if it's not a natural fiber, the other raw material we could use are synthetic fibers. Synthetic fibers include acrylic, nylon, polyester, and spandex. Okay? So if you see any of these words, whether the natural or the synthetic fibers, that is the fibers that are used to make the fabric. So if we look at all these sewing terms, we can pick out the ones that are fibers. Now, what about the rest of all these words? What do they mean? To understand them, we need to understand, really basically, the process of how the fibers become fabric. What happens is we take our raw materials, our fibers, and we turn them into long strings that are called yarns. And then those yarns are either woven or knit together to make fabric. Now, woven and knit are two different categories of fabric that we're going to talk about in a minute. But depending on how you knit and weave these yarns together, you will end up with all of these other fabric words. So you can end up with a plain weave, a twill weave, a satin weave, a sateen weave, a waffle knit, a ribbed knit, like all these other words describe exactly how the yarns or the fibers were knit or woven together. Okay? Now, I personally find that when you're starting out, all of these words, while interesting, are a little bit overwhelming. So I want to show you a much faster, less confusing way to pick your fabric that has nothing to do with these words. But I just wanted you to be familiar with what these are, so when you see them, you're like, oh, actually, that's a fiber, or oh, that's a weave, or that's a way it's knit, okay? So hopefully you kind of understand where these words are coming from. But now let's talk about how you can actually pick your fabric. So remember how I mentioned knit versus woven? These are the two biggest categories of fabrics that you're going to run into. Let's talk about them because they're very important. So woven means that we weave the fibers together, and commonly woven fabrics are either not stretchy at all or just a little bit stretchy. Okay, and these are going to be the best fabrics for you as a beginner. They're going to make your life really easy so you can focus on the how of sewing, not struggling with your fabric. Just so you're aware, the alternative to woven is knit. And knit fabric is, if you think about a sweatshirt or a t-shirt and how it's stretchy, that's going to be a knit. Okay, and those are just a little bit trickier to work with. So my recommendation when you're just starting out is to look for a woven. So how do you determine if a fabric is woven? You're going to pick your fabric, you're going to take it, and you're just going to pull it up and down and then side to side. Okay, and if it doesn't stretch, perfect, you're in a good direction. And even if it stretches a little bit, it'll still be pretty easy to work with. So if you love a fabric and it's just a little bit stretchy, it'll still be okay. You can use it. So now that we know that we're working with a woven fabric, we want to look at two more characteristics that help define woven fabrics and help you find the perfect fabric for your beginner projects. And those two characteristics are weight and structure versus drape. Okay, so weight has to do with how much the fabric physically weighs or how thick the fabric is. Okay, so imagine with me a light summer dress, something like this. It's really flowy, lightweight, and when I actually feel it, it's very thin fabric. It feels almost like paper, right? It's very, very thin. Alternatively, if we think about a winter coat or this gray houndstooth fabric, and I feel it, and you can just imagine this. If you think about a winter coat and you think about feeling the thickness of it, it's thicker, it's heavier than the summer dress, right? You can imagine that. We all wear clothing. This is probably you're familiar with this. So when we talk about weight, talk about how heavy a fabric is if we actually put it on a scale and weighed it. So this is going to weigh more than my summer dress, right? Does this make sense? Can you imagine these two alternatives? Okay, good. If this is still confusing you, let me know down in the comments below and I will try to think of some more examples, but I'm hoping this makes sense. So that's weight. And when we're looking at these beginner-friendly projects like these loose, flowy, beautiful dresses, skirts, blouses, we're looking for things that are lightweight. We don't want these heavy winter materials, right? We want something lightweight and flowy, which lightweight and flowy tend to go together, but are not always the same. Let's talk about flowy versus structured. And the easiest way for me to test this whenever I go to the fabric store is to just take a piece of fabric, take it, fold it in half, one layer, fold it in half, and then use my hand and pinch it about 4 inches, 8 centimeters or so back from the edge of the fabric. Then when I hold it, we can see that this fabric stays straight out at a 90-degree angle, okay? And if I do push it side to side, it can fall, but if I try to hold it up and down, okay, so it's staying like this, we see, okay, now it's going down just a little bit, but mostly it wants to stay straight across. The alternative is do something like this. I do the same test, So I just take a little piece, I fold it over, fold it back, let go. This fabric wants to fall a little bit more. The last one was either straight out or maybe like 10 degrees. This one's more like 15. And then when I shake it just a little bit, it doesn't want to just lean as a whole piece. It kind of just gets flatter. Okay, so this fabric is less structured than the last one. So let's keep going. Same thing, I fold it over a little bit. This. And this one wants to fall down even more. Okay, this is a really good test to see how structured a fabric is. The straighter it stays, the more structured it is. The more it falls, the more drapey the fabric is. Okay, so we see it's falling. Okay. And then finally, we can go to a satin weave, which is a very drapey. Okay, and it doesn't want to stay up at all. It wants to very much fall down, and no matter how much I try to hold this, yeah, it's not going to do anything. Okay, so you see that when I said this is a satin weave. I know that because I've been sewing a long time, but you don't need to know all of those words for the different types of weaves for the different fibers or different fabrics. You can just do this test. You take your fabric, you pull it, see if it's stretchy. So, here, no, not stretchy, not stretchy. So this is a woven, that's good. And it's lightweight, it's nice and thin. It feels almost like paper between my fingers. And then when I do my structure test, it's nice and flowy. So this would be a beautiful fabric to make a beginner sewing project. Okay, versus what's really common and a huge problem is when people go to the fabric store, you will find these. They're the quilting cottons. There'll be the most number of fabrics will be these, and they're cotton. So people are like, oh, a nice lightweight cotton. This will be perfect. This is lightweight. It is nice and thin between my fingers. It feels almost like paper. It's lightweight. It's not stretchy. Okay, so it passes 2 tests. But when I do the 3rd test to check for structure, it wants to stay going straight out. And this is a problem because most clothing that we wear and that you buy at the store is not structured like this. Most clothing that we wear and that we buy has some drape to it. And when you try to sew clothing with fabric that's too structured like this, it makes the project look very boxy and very crafty. So did this happen to you? Did you go and get a nice lightweight cotton, but it's too structured and that was the problem? If it did, let me know down below. This is the problem that I had for years because I didn't understand the problem. This is the problem. So when you go and look for your fabric for your project, for your beginner dresses and skirts and blouses, you want to check these 3 things. You want it to be woven, which means it doesn't have stretch. You want to make sure that it's lightweight, so it's thin, almost like paper. And 3, you want to make sure that it's flowy and drapey, not structured. So when you do this test, no, too structured. Anything like this, where it has like this almost 45-degree angle or more, is going to be a really good option. I hope that these tips make finding your fabric much easier. And I have actually one more mistake that beginners make, and that is going to the fabric store to buy their first fabric for their first project. Now, can you go to the fabric store? Of course, if you want to, go for it. But I will warn you that what tends to happen is you go to the fabric store, you spend all this time to find the perfect, beautiful fabric, and then you're gonna get home and feel stressed about cutting into it. Oh my gosh, I bought this beautiful fabric, I spent this money on it. What if it doesn't turn out well? What if what if I don't like it? What if I waste the money and the time and I cut it and it's wrong? And breathe. This is a very common problem. I hear it every week at least once. So skip this. Skip the stress, skip the overwhelm, and instead go secondhand shopping. Go to your local thrift store and find secondhand curtains, bed sheets, or tablecloths that fit the rules we just talked about. That they are woven, not stretchy, lightweight, and are not too structured. And I know what you may be thinking. Abby, they're going to be gross and hideous looking, and I'm never going to wear that in public. It doesn't have to be. I have actually taken to only sewing with thrifted clothing because I'm trying to be really eco-friendly. And here's just a couple of examples of clothes that I've made from thrifted curtains, bed sheets, and tablecloths. And you can tell me if you can actually tell that they're not made from fabric I bought from the fabric store. Okay, so these do not have to be ugly. But the other thing to keep in mind is that maybe for your first project or two, maybe it's just good practice. And then once you've used just some generic purple bed sheets to make a skirt or two, then you'll have the confidence to go to the fabric store, buy some beautiful fabric, and make that skirt again, and then wear that one in public. No one says the first project has to be wearable. So this is up to you. This is how you want to do it. But what I will say is that when you go thrifting and you get a bed sheet, if you get a linen bed sheet, that's the absolute best, my favorite find. But if you buy a bed sheet set, then you are going to get so much more fabric for your money than you're going to at the fabric store. This is going to give you a ton of material to practice with, to try things, and to not have any stress about wasting money on something. Okay, so that is by far my best tip for you. And finally, I know that some people don't love not having an actual answer. So my recommendations as absolute beginners, if you're going to look for a specific fiber or a specific fabric, I would look for rayon or viscose. That's just two words for the same fabric. That's that wood pulp fiber. This is a beautiful, lightweight, very flowy fabric and super easy to sew with. So if you just want a word, an answer, a fabric to look for, viscose. Okay, a viscose fiber fabric will be amazing. And linen. Lightweight linens are absolutely beautiful for clothing. They feel great on the skin. Very, very nice. And if you're not finding a viscose or a linen that you love, or you're wondering about what other fabric options might be good, a final tip for you is actually go into your closet. Go into your closet and find the pieces, the dresses, the blouses that you think feel really nice or you love the look of when you're wearing them, and check the tag, because the tag will actually tell you which fibers that material is made of. And then you can use that information when you go fabric shopping. Okay? So I hope that all of these tips and tricks help you and make you feel more confident in picking your fabric, and that you love your final project, whatever it is that you're making. Remember, this is just one of the 5 steps that I've put together to help absolute beginners get started sewing their own clothes. So if you need those, absolutely free, they're down below. And if you'd like to make your first DIY piece of clothing with me, we'll go through everything together from unboxing your machine, setting it up, to actually making and wearing a skirt like this one, then you can join my class down below. But if you're on the DIY path and you want to just keep watching YouTube, here are some other beginner-friendly videos that will help you on your sewing journey. Whatever you decide to do, good luck. I hope you enjoy your project and happy sewing.